President of the Raleigh-Apex National NAACP Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Next slide, Marie. Gerald was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He attended the historically Black College University of Lincoln University and the Art Institute of San Antonio and Air University, which is part of the United States Air Force. He is a United States Air Force veteran of the Iraq and the Afghanistan wars, and he retired with 20 years of service as a protocol officer in the Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Agency, and he was stationed at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. During his career of service, his years, he received numerous military awards and decorations. He is the previous owner of 2 small businesses, and he is a trusted advisor to commercial entrepreneurs and enterprises, institutions, and community leaders around the globe. Next slide, please. In his capacity with the NAACP, he covers the area of Apex, Cary, Fuquay Varina, Holly Springs, Morrisville, and Raleigh. So a lot of the folks that are on this call, the Zoom, we're all in his area. He presides over the branch and executive committee meetings. He serves on the National NAACP Election Supervisory Committee and is the chair of the North Carolina NAACP Election Procedures Committee. He is the chair of the Wake County Community Remembrance Project. So next slide. His topic is Hope is an Action. And we read his article in preparation of his talk, which was the editorial by John Lewis, Together You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation. So it's my pleasure to have Gerald with us today. We look forward to your presentation. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Mary. I really appreciate you sharing those details in my background. You did a fantastic job. I think everybody need to do it exactly the way you just did. So I'm going to get those slides from you because that was pitch perfect. Mark, I want to thank you for inviting me out here to have this opportunity to be here with the E-Club for Social Justice. You know, that's my niche. It's what I do every single day. And I appreciate you and your friendship. And Mark has also helped me out with becoming a Rotary member for the first time in my life. So I signed up and I'm a new Rotary member as well. So thank you for that as well. All right, so are we ready to go ahead? Let me go ahead and share my screen. Yes, we are. We're gonna roll right into this. All right. So everybody can see the screen? Fantastic. All right. So you guys know who I am. I'm Gerald Givens, president of the Raleigh-Apex NAACP. And the NAACP right now, we have over 2.5, almost 2.5 million members who are activists and advocates who all are mobilized online and offline and getting engaged in what's going on across our country. We have over 2,200 branches across the country. We have over 800 youth and college units who are members under the age of 25 that are involved. We're in 47 states. We have 1.3 million followers on Instagram, 500,000 on Twitter, and 650,000 followers on Facebook. And our organization have been fighting and saying Black Lives Matter for 111 years. Our mission in the NAACP is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and secure the health and well-being of all persons. And that's something I really want everybody to know, that when we say that we are there to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic and equality rights, we're saying it for everyone, most people think that it's, when you hear the colored people, that it's only with the emphasis of, you know, the Black and brown communities, Asian American communities, but we're talking about everybody, because if not one of us is free, none of us is free. And so that's what our focus is. To get a deep understanding, normally and traditionally, I go through a real big, huge background, but by me knowing so many of you here, and a lot of you are actively involved here in the E-Club for Social Justice, you know, at the beginning of this presentation, I always try to make sure that we all have a good understanding of slavery. And today, I'm not going to go through every single one of these items due to time's sake, but I want to emphasize on this particular slide that in 1619, this nation changed, this region changed, this hemisphere changed. And that's when those first 20 enslaved Africans showed up here on the shores. And in this particular slide that I have here with the timeline from 1619 to 1755, what I'm establishing here in this slide is that how to treat Africans in particular was codified in law. And one of those greatest examples of that is, you see, in 1689 to 1865, Virginia enacted more than 130 slave statutes. And then after one of the most early slave revolts that took place in Stonewall, South Carolina in 1740, they created a 58 chapter law that basically said, this is how we're going to control, this is how we're going to keep the Africans in check. And that was all before our country became a nation. So from 1776 to 1865, we had some very serious things that took place. You know, I began this slide off by establishing the fact that 41 out of the 56 folks who signed on the Declaration of Independence, they own people. They own African slaves in particular. And the other big thing I want to point out is that in 1790, that 1.5 million pounds of cotton was being picked annually by over 700 people who were enslaved. Now, if you've ever held a cotton ball in your hand, you know how light that cotton ball is. Imagine how much cotton has to be picked for it to weigh 1.5 million pounds. That's a lot of cotton. And you keep that in mind. The other thing that I want to share with you is that there were some laws that helped shape the mentality and the structure of racism and white supremacy, and put us to the point of civil war. And those things dealt with the Fugitive Slave Act and also the Dred Scott decision, which ultimately led to the American Civil War, in which over 620,000 Americans were killed in the American Civil War. I always tell people that it's amazing what my ancestors did, that after everything that I just shared with you, everything that they went through, they didn't come out and try to build their own militia or their own military. They didn't try to go out and build gun factories and bomb factories. Instead, what they did was they built faith-based organizations. What they did was they built historically Black colleges and universities. And what they did was they built Black-owned businesses and Black communities. I always find that to be absolutely amazing, because what they did after the Civil War, I look at it as the foundation of hope, not only for the African American community, but for our country as a whole. And one of the greatest examples of that is the 62nd and 65th U.S. Colored Troops. That's a picture of those two regiments together. And what they did after the Civil War is they put their monies together and they founded Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri. And as you saw in my bio, that's where I went to college. And so with that seed of hope that they planted back then resulted in me being able to get a college education. But not only that, what they did, it inspired folks like this man right here in this picture who was my hero. Whenever I would deploy in the Air Force, I would always keep two things with me. I would keep the American flag, a little small one, and I would keep it in the left side of my pocket, right there over my chest. And then I had this picture of Benjamin O. Davis Jr. next to my wife and my children and the rest of my family that was there with me. And this picture is so profound. You know, most pilots would have on their nose art, they would have a cartoon or they would have their girlfriend's name. But what Benjamin O. Davis Jr. did was he put the term by request. And he did that for a specific reason. For those of you who haven't heard of who Benjamin Davis O. Jr. is, Benjamin O. Davis Jr. was a West Point cadet who went to West Point, and for 4 years, because he was Black, no one talked to him. They wouldn't eat with him. He was in his dormitory room alone. He didn't have a roommate for 4 years, and yet when he graduated from West Point, he was ranked 35th out of about 250 cadets at West Point. Then Benjamin O. Davis would go on to command and lead the Tuskegee Airmen. And it was so profound what he did. I had the opportunity in my life to be mentored by 3 Tuskegee Airmen. And what they told me about General Davis, they was like, he was all about excellence in everything you do. He didn't let race stop them from being able to fly those jets to serve our country. He was determined in every aspect to make sure that we had equal opportunity as much as he can. And he laid the foundation from West Point to the Army Air Corps and to the United States Air Force for so many opportunities that are still being taken advantage of to this day. But after World War II was over with, when Black soldiers start coming back home to the United States, they were targeted all across the country. They were the #1 targets for lynchings and beatings and things of that nature. And in 1946, just about 12 hours after Isaac Woodard had been discharged from the Army, he was heading from actually Georgia to back home here in North Carolina. And when they made a stop in South Carolina, the police officers beat him, attacked him, and they blinded him. And this particular incident, it started to galvanize the civil rights movement as a whole. The NAACP, it expanded during this time frame more than any time in the NAACP's history. A lot of those veterans who came back from World War II, like Medgar Evers and so many others, and what's his name? That was right on the right-hand side of John Lewis. I can't remember his name on the top of my head right now, but they were all there and helping the NAACP expand after World War II. And this is another great pictures to show you how they had to organize and plan and get things together. This is a picture of Benjamin O. Davis, Joe Louis, who was also a Tuskegee Airman, if you guys didn't know that, who was a famous boxer. Joe Louis was a Tuskegee Airman. Then you have Thurgood Marshall there, and you got Daisy Lampkin there too. The sisters was involved in this whole process too. We can't leave them out. They were engaged in what was going on and what was happening as well. But this is a classic example of how they had to work together to create the changes that were needed in our country. And the other thing that's significant about this particular convention is that President Truman When he saw what happened to Isaac Woodard, it inspired him to come and to speak to the NAACP at this convention. President Truman was the first US president to speak to the NAACP. From the Civil War, basically to the end of World War II, up until like 1968, pretty much, really. We call that the period is known as 100 years of lynching, where, as you saw, the more African Americans began to make progress politically, socially, economically, you saw that terrorism attacks, burning down churches, burning down homes, leveling whole neighborhoods, all those different types of things were happening to intimidate and to discourage African American people to continue to make progress. But in spite of all those different things that happened back then, they just kept looking forward and kept doing what they had to do to bring us to where we are today and into the future. So in 1948, President Truman took action. President Truman abolished discrimination in the US military, leading the way for it to happen not only in the military, but pretty much across all sectors throughout the United States. This was a very significant part of my family's history because my grandfather, Alfonso Lumpkins, he also served in the Korean War, and he served as an airman, and he served in Northern Africa. And I also want to share with you all that when this happened and when this took place, this allowed for the United States to have a distinct advantage in being able to fight in the Korean War at a pace and in a way that got better results than ever before. So what am I trying to tell y'all? I'm trying to tell y'all today that hope is all about action. You got the executive order of 9981, Brown versus Board of Education, the Montgomery bus boycott, the Little Rock Nine, the Greensboro sit-in, the Freedom Rise, the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Montgomery March, Selma to Montgomery March, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act, which was passed just 2 years before I was born. So that's just telling you all that this struggle has been long and it's taken multiple acts. And as you see by that picture, it's just not about Black people. It's about everybody. All of us have to be in this fight and in this struggle together. That's a picture of some of the freedom riders when all of them got together and they were arrested in that photo. So bam, let's bring it forward about hope being action. For the first time in Air Force history, the first time in military history, General C.Q. Brown is the first African-American leader of any military branch. And that just happened about 2 months ago, about a month ago. And who C.Q. Brown is saluting is Chief Master Sergeant Khalif Wright. Khalif Wright is only the second Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. And for 9 days last month, the top 2 people in the United States Air Force were African American. That's a complete testament of the whole entire struggle, dating back from slavery, moving to the troops who fought in the Civil War, to the troops who fought in World War II and Korea. They laid the foundation for this to happen. And General Brown, he said it best. This is a very historic day, and I do not take this moment lightly. Today is possible due to the perseverance of those who went before me, serving as an inspiration for me, and so many others. Man, and that ties right there to me directly. That's my picture of me as a freshman at Lincoln University in our yearbook. That's me in uniform at the Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Agency before I retired. And that's me as president of the Raleigh-Apex NAACP. 3 organizations that have helped continue to make sure that hope was in action. But most importantly, you guys got a chance to read that article. I got so melancholy when I got the word that John Lewis passed away. Because in that picture where you see John Lewis and I together, we were in Washington, D.C., and I had been to his office several times and talked to him and about many different things over the times. And he told me that night, he said, "I'm just so proud of you," when we were in D.C. And I didn't have any intentions on going to Washington, D.C. when they had his casket on display there at the Capitol. But I woke up that morning and the Spirit just told me go. So I went. And I went up there and I gave Congressman Lewis a salute. One of my favorite quotes is from W.E.B. Du Bois. He says, "In this place stood progress, and progress, I understand, is necessarily ugly." This is not pretty. It never has been pretty. It never will be pretty. And we all know that progress is ugly. And I was so glad to have this opportunity. The young folks here in Wake County, they called me up and they said, "Mr. Givens, we want you to march with on the front line with us." And I think that that's very important, because as leaders, it's not about passing the torch. It's about lighting the torch so that we all can see together and go forward together. And then I'm gonna leave you guys with a quote from Michelle Obama. She said, "The men and women of the NAACP have stood up and sat in and risked life and limb so that African Americans can take their rightful places. So I know that I stand here today and know that my husband stands where he is today because of this organization and because of the struggles and sacrifices of all those who have came before us. But I also know that their legacy isn't an entitlement to be taken for granted. And I know it is not simply a gift to be enjoyed. Instead, it's an obligation to be fulfilled." Hope is an action, everybody. Action, impact, results. That's what it's all about. Hope. Thank you, and that's my presentation.
So do we have questions?
I just want to make a comment. This is Doris Wallace. I learned something from you today, and I want to thank you for that. And I really appreciate it. It was really touching and eye-opening me, and to make me continue to think hope is action, and we must do that boldly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Doris.
We do have a few questions. First of all, I had asked, is Durham part of your area?
Say that again.
Is Durham part
Durham?
of Durham?
It's
Yeah.
not under our jurisdiction, but I do work with the Durham president.
Okay, okay. Yes, we have a lot of thank you for your service, a lot of comments and a lot of thank yous and a lot of cheers that you are part of Rotary.
Thank you.
Dee Cutshaw has asked, what do you think may be the most effective way we can make hope an action today?
I believe that the most important way that we can make hope and action today is to encourage ourselves and each other to get out here and to vote. I think this is probably one of the most consequential elections probably in our lifetime. I think that democracy is on the line. And so I think that the most important thing that we can do is to encourage people to get out here and vote, either vote by mail or either early vote or either show up on election day. But by any means, go vote.
Yes, yeah.
I would just like to, this is Mark Vasconcelos. I just would like to thank President Givens for his presentation and for taking the time to be here with us. We are blessed to have him as part of the Rotary Club of All Nations. And the day that the body of Mr. George Floyd was here in North Carolina, I had the opportunity to march with him in Raleigh. and it's very, the NAACP continue to do a lot of good work. And through that organization, it's good to see a new generation of young people that are fired up and carrying the torch. So thank you, brother, and may God bless you.
Thank you.
We do have a few more chats. Rod, I think you wanted to ask a question.
I do.
Okay.
Gosh, first I want to say though, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your service to our country. It really, I was moved and inspired by what you shared today. So thank you for that. My question is, I certainly appreciate what you say about voting and agree that that is an important immediate step that we all need to take. Beyond that, I'm wondering what are further actions you alluded to in your presentation, the kind of systemic actions that were taken throughout history in our country that serve to reinforce the way that African Americans were treated. I'm wondering what you see as the antithesis to that. What actions need to be taken to change systemic racism in our country, and what I guess is the agenda in that respect that the NAACP is putting forth towards that end?
I think, Rod, that's an outstanding question. And I think that you have to identify what is wrong. Mm-hmm. I know that a lot of times people don't like history, but when you go to the doctor, the first thing they ask you for is your medical history.
Correct.
They want to know.
So true. That's true. Yeah.
They want to know your past.
Yeah.
And we have to really examine and look at some of these laws that are still on books to this day that they create an advantage for some people and they create a disadvantage for others.
Yeah.
We have to go identify those, and as a country, we have to go through and fix those things. It's the difference with, in Dr. King and them area, they were talking about equality. Mm-hmm. And now in our time, we got to talk about equity.
Yeah, thank you. And related to that, that's what I think makes the judicial elections or appointments so important right now in that regard. Yeah. So even more important that we vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael, Michael has a question. Laughlin?
Yes, Mr. Givens, I appreciate you being on. I would love to get your contact information so we can definitely connect at a later date. Sure. But I'm going to give it to you a little bit harder than this, all right? Okay, because we need to be a little realistic. Mary, don't get me in trouble, Mary. Don't get me in trouble. Okay, so let's start, right? Like history has been going on. I mean, just by the amount of information you put up there, this has been going on for forever. Action, when you talk about action, we haven't actually done any action since I think the last thing of action that I saw on your thing was the I can't remember the last part of it, but it's been a while.
Housing rights.
The housing, right? It's been a while since we actually put some action into place. Okay, I'm a 40-year-old Black man in Rotary, and I'm going to be honest. I like to be honest about things, right? Rotary is a historically white organization, right? And just look around the country. Civics, right? Civic organizations are losing people. They're not actually gaining people, right? Be honest, right? There's less of people who are like me. There's less of my peers who are joining us and getting into this fight, right? Because, to be honest, right? We've heard this story for so long, right? The action that I'm being told that today as a 40-year-old Black, I'm a business owner as well, right? The action that I keep being told is that I need to vote, right? But we vote every 2 years, right? It's not gonna happen again. It's gonna happen again in November and then again in 2 more years. This is not gonna stop, right? After November, we still have to have action, right? And I find that, to be honest, we have a lot of talk. There's a lot of big, great, grand ideas. But when it comes down to the actual getting involved with and listening, because I think to be honest, they say, I had to look it up. I didn't know I was a millennial. Millennials started at the 80s, and I didn't know I was. So I'm going to start talking bad about millennials. But they say millennials don't listen, right? They say that we don't want to hear. But I find that that's an issue on both sides of the generation. It seems that no one's listening to each other, right? And at the end of the day, I'm telling you, as a Black man, a fellow Rotarian, a young man who is motivated to try to do action, right? We're built differently, so we're tired of hearing things that we already know is true, right? We've known voting is supposed to be, Selma showed us that voting is important. If we don't know that voting is important by now, it's, I mean, really, like, right? I mean, we had to march and people, I mean, come, like, really, like, if you don't know the story of Selma, then we shouldn't still be talking about voting. At this point, I think, if you don't mind, I think the next step to voting is knowing who's on the ballot, right? I don't think we do a good job of just saying, we can't just keep voting for just Republicans or just Democrats anymore, right? We have to vote for the smartest person. It's a lot, Gerald, and I can go on forever. But
I know. And Michael, I appreciate, what you're saying, because a lot of what you're saying, we hear that from younger people all the time. And the best thing that I know how to do is to create leaders. I think that one of the mistakes that we made over the last 50, 60 years was people have been focused on creating followers and not creating leaders. And so, and what that means is you have to take them, say for an example, like our branch now has an effort called Trolley to the Polls, where we're going to be providing free rides to voters all throughout Wake County to the polls for 12 of the 17 days doing early voting. We're going to be primarily doing this during the week. And so what I did was I grabbed the young people in our branch to be right along my side to go through the logistics of the planning, how to do fundraising, how to write letters, how to make those telephone calls, how to have those meetings that you need to have, because all of those things are exactly what Benjamin O. Davis had to do. That's what John Lewis had to do. That's what Dr. King had to do. That's what, what a lot of people who are all engaged, Diana Nash, so many other people, and bring it forward to modern times and modern leaders. That's what we have to do. We just can't. I think that the mistake that's made is a lot of times we focus so much on the protests and the civil disobedience, but before you can get there, you have to communicate. If it's anything I've ever learned by working at the Air Force Intelligence and Surveillance Reconnaissance Agency for the 10 years that I was there, and I planned every single meeting by the generals that work there, right? Communication is the key to success. And probably one of the I'll leave with two real quick examples of how information changed my perspective. As businessman, Michael, I served as the Texas Association Chambers of Commerce senior advisor, and I went up to the White House to meet with President Obama's economic team. President Obama sent us over to the Department of Commerce. And Michael, I cried the entire day, because when I saw where Black businesses stood compared to where everybody else's businesses were in the country, I mean, I was like, I wasted my time in the military. I should have been out here teaching everybody how to start a business. It was just like so heartbreaking, right? That information helped me to work with entrepreneurs like you to make sure that you're getting the key word, opportunity and access. Another great example of that in dealing with information is just like what just happened with the Apex Police. Just recently, Apex Police took it on their own to go up to the NAACP's website, download the NAACP standards for law enforcement, and then they did a self-inspection of themselves, made the information public, and then they emailed me to report. And now, after they did that, all the other law enforcement agencies in our jurisdiction are doing the exact same thing. I mean, that's what it's going to take. You know, the information it's just so powerful.
Yeah, and I
We got
agree. So I would
we got
ask
a
you-
lot of work to do, Michael. We got a lot of work to do, and I agree with you.
Yeah, no. So, and I'm here. Like, one thing that I've always said is, just because it's difficult doesn't mean I'm not in the fight, right? Anything worth fighting for is going to be difficult. What I would ask for you, so I'm going to reach out and love to get your contact information. If there's any way that I could help in terms of, my thing is, I like to help people to get jobs and opportunity to jobs and economic relief. And so if there's anything I can do and help in terms of starting businesses, entrepreneurship, and like you're saying, help light those fires, I would definitely love to be an asset to whatever you're doing.
Let's make it happen, Mike.
All right. You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mike, thank you. I just wanted to thank him, and I wanted him to know that we gather here to learn how to do all this and to learn the history. And so we're working on it as Rotarians and as visitors. But I see that we have a few other questions. Marie has a question.
Sure. Just this morning, I was outside working and listening to podcasts, and one of the podcasts I listened to was about the disparities in health outcomes between people of color and white folk. And I knew that, but I didn't know that. And the thing that struck me today was an African-American woman who is a college graduate has poorer health outcomes and 5 years less longevity than a white high school graduate.
Opportunity.
Points to systemic long-term problems.
Right.
I listened to another podcast that was, oh gosh, I don't have it in front of me. It was, I'll put it in the notes afterwards. It was a nonprofit organization that dealt with building communities and walking in the Black women's footsteps, the foremothers of civil rights. And so this organization got together in a way to say, okay, let's walk, let's learn about what our foremothers did, and let's then build community. And it really moved me what this nonprofit was doing. So my question to you, is the NAACP doing anything in healthcare? My background is in nutrition. Do we have any way that we can serve in that arena or connections you can help us make?
Absolutely. You know, in the NAACP, in each one of our branches, we have about 21 different committees from the armed services all the way down to, I believe it's our youth works, which is the last committee. It's like about 21 different committees. And one of those committees is healthcare. And the chair of our branch is Dr. Melinda Lotta. I'm quite sure some of you all probably know her because she's actively involved in the community as well. And we have been, in particular, our NAACP branch, and then the hardest hit zip code 27610 in Wake County, which is one of the highest in the states with COVID-19. We passed out 50,000 face masks in that zip code. And Target just gave us access to unlimited face masks as well as hand sanitizer to pass out in that zip code as well. And so, you know, and then I, as a civil rights leader, I had to go to the powers that be and just say, hey, if you live in that zip code and you're Black, you just need to go be able to take the test. You don't even need to have the symptoms. Just be Black and go take the test in that zip code. So those are the type of things that the NAACP have been doing. And somehow somebody got the word in New York about what we were doing with the face mask here in Raleigh. And we were able to make connections in the heart of Brooklyn and Harlem. And we were able to send tens of thousands of face masks right to the heart of the coronavirus because of what they saw, what we were doing here in Raleigh.
Great. Thank you. I'll reach out for that connection.
Thank you.
Gerald, that was a great presentation, and you've gotten a lot of thank yous, and thank you for a wonderful presentation all across the board in the chat. Michael, I wasn't laughing at you. I love you, and I think you're great. So, but Michael's very straightforward, and that's exactly what we need. And my question, and Marie kind of posed it as well, regarding healthcare, but the NAACP as a group, as a committee, where do you feel that our committee members can best get involved? Or would you just suggest that we look at the 21 committees in the area and see what we can do, what we can be involved with?
Well, first of all, just like how I joined the Rotary so I could be a part of what's happening, I'm going to encourage you all to join our NAACP branch or either the local branch that's either near you as well. Because just being a member helps the organization grow as a whole. As a matter of fact, since the incident took place with George Floyd, more than 25,000 people have joined the NAACP. So I encourage you all to do that, and I can provide information and send over a membership application to you also, and you can share with everyone here, with all your members that are participating here today, and those who are not.
You have my
That's number
email
one.
information, and you can send all that to me, and I'll distribute it to our group.
Absolutely. And that's number one. That's the very first thing that you can do. And if you don't want to become a member, at least be a partner and work with us to try to do those little things that mean a lot. You know, one of the things that I've learned, or how I try to lead our NAACP branch, is while we're trying to accomplish the things at the top of the tree, let's go ahead and take care of the low-hanging fruit. And so we'll be out there in the community helping to pass out 40,000 laptops and 10,000 hotspots to the children that are going to school. And then recently we had a group of parents who came to us and said, hey, we've created these pods. It was a group of white mothers, actually. They said, hey, we created these pods for our children, but what about the Black and brown kids? So I work with those mothers and our NAACP branch, and we created a program called Pearl, and which we are providing assistance with those kids with their computer-based learning at home over at the Boys and Girls Club. We got about 40 of them over there right now. More than 100 kids signed up to be a part of the program. We raised enough funds to where we got about 12 to maybe 15 college students who are helping these kids get their homework done with this in this e-learning environment that they're in. And then we got about 5 retired teachers that are helping the college students and mentoring them. And so, and the sweet thing about that is that we raised enough funds that we were able to recently give each one of the 40-something children, their families, a $250 stipend to help them out during this hard times. That's how you guys can help us out and make an impact.
Thank you.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Does anybody else have anything to say? Stuart, if you are muted if you wanted to say something. No, okay. He just looked like he wanted to say something. I want to thank you. I'm jotting down notes, and I used to belong to the NAACP down in Wilmington, and since I moved here, I just didn't join it, but now I'm going to join it up here. Thank you very much for your inspiration. And our group, we just continue to learn.